Tonight we are making some buns. And we're not just making any buns, we're making sourdough inspired buns within 1 hour. At least that's a challenge. That's what I'm trying to do. I have no idea whether that's actually going to work or not. And to make buns within 1 hour, sourdough buns, just plain sourdough buns, it's not going to work. It's too little time. So what I like to do is I always like to do a little bit of a hybrid strategy, and I'm going to be using sourdough together with some dry yeast. That way you can just speed up the process way more. And when you just have 1 hour, what works really well is to also use a little bit of malt, and that malt is going to break down your flour a little bit faster, also provide some nutrients for the yeast and the sourdough just to increase the fermentation speed. And you also want to make sure that you use warm water and maybe a little bit of sugar in the dough as well, just to make things faster. And no worries about the sugar, the yeast is going to eat everything. You're not going to have a sweet bread in the end. All right, so then let's get started. I have the recipe right here. I will just quickly be changing the camera. I'll be moving the camera down so that you can see everything. Oops. I hope this is okay like this. And so one more time, the recipe for everybody who just wants to read it real quick. So that's the bread flour. We get warm water. Warm water works excellent. I'm using my ripe starter. It's actually a little bit over peak performance, but that's okay because we have a short fermentation period. And then sugar, malt, dry yeast, and then the salt. And let's put everything together. I already added the flour and the water. It's now time to quickly add I added the flour and the salt, and now it's time to add the water. That's 260 grams. And this is quite warm water just because we want to make sure that the fermentation is happening a little bit faster. So 260 grams. Great. Then let's start with the sourdough starter. And I'm just trying to do everything in 1 hour. So this recipe is a little bit of a panic recipe, assuming that you have guests coming over. This is my sourdough starter. It's relatively ripe. It does not smell that good anymore, but that's normal with sourdough. If you ferment it for a little bit too long, I made it this morning. It was a 1:5 ratio, 10 grams of starter, 50 grams of flour, 50 grams of water. That's always what I recommend to do. The hydration here is 65% on this bread. That's what I'm aiming for. This depends a little bit on the flour that you have. In this case, it's a bread flour, which has a relatively high protein content, around 15%. So that's the reason why we can go a little bit higher in terms of hydration for the buns. For buns, I would recommend you to not go so high in hydration because else they just flatten out a little bit too much. Starter added, sugar. Time to add the sugar. That's 20 grams. So I'm now adding 20 grams of sugar. And the sugar here, that's pretty much rocket fuel for your sourdough and for the yeast that we are going to add. It's just going to make everything so much faster. And I have no idea if this recipe actually is going to work within an hour or whether it's going to take a little bit longer. But I figured why not try? And Brötchen is just something so German. We Germans love Brötchen. Malt. So this is how the malt looks. And this is actually extract from the wheat. Pretty much what they do is they just let it sprout, and that converts all the starch into sugar, and then they just take that and bake it. And actually that process of baking it, that's also how you make beer. That converts the starch into sugar, and then they just combine that. So this is the malt, very delicious malt. This is the same thing you pretty much use for making beer. All right. Okay, so malt has been added, and now we just need to be adding our dry yeast. So dry yeast, you could also definitely be using fresh yeast. It's pretty much the same organism, it's just that fresh yeast has a little more water added. So you can replace dry yeast and fresh yeast with a factor of 1 to 3 pretty much. During Corona times, this is pure gold. And you might be wondering, shoot, that's actually quite a lot of yeast. Yes, it is, because I want to finish this in an hour. Yes, Cassie Royal, how's it going? Hope all is good. This is different than molasses. Molasses is coming from Zuckerrüben. Don't ask me please about the English name. It's sugar roots, something like this. And this is coming from wheat. So that's the difference pretty much. Pam, if you don't have malt, no worries. Malt just makes things a little bit quicker. Nothing to worry. The sugar is also totally going to be okay. I just like to use malt. It also adds a little bit of great additional taste to it. It's a useful thing to purchase at somebody. Elikin, how's it going? So Elikin asks, what's the point of adding starter? And yes, that's actually a totally valid question. It just gives it this little bit of a sour taste. That's why I like to do that. I like to combine both worlds pretty much. Roseanne, sugarcane, thank you. Uttara Sharma, hello from India. How's it going? Hope all is good. Hello back to India. Namaste. Now what I'm doing is I'm just stirring everything together with my hand, making sure I incorporate the ingredients evenly. Ah, yes. Jan says malt syrup is mostly made from barley, not wheat. That's totally correct. The same thing which you pretty much use for beer making. So thanks for clarifying that. And you can see it still sticks a little bit. I just want to make sure that everything is nicely incorporated, similar to when you're making a sourdough bread. I typically always do this for roughly 2 minutes. There's not really a technique for this. Anything goes. I like to do this, fold it over pretty much. We just want to make sure that all the ingredients are now nicely. This is made from sugarcane. Yes, thank you, Teresa. Sugarcane, exactly. Wait, is it sugarcane or is it sugar roots? Because I think in Germany you also can make drinks out of this, for instance, out of molasses. So gin is sometimes made out of molasses. That's just what I know. Toasted Synapse Gaming. Fun fact, I have malt paste. Okay, interesting for cats. Interesting. So you have malt paste for cats. Wow. I did not know that this exists. Noah Tababa, are you going for autolyse? The autolyse would typically just be mixing flour and water. And in this case, since we are just trying to do everything within 1 hour, no time to do any autolyse. I actually could have done that. I could have started to mix just flour and water earlier this morning. It would have made me a better dough for sure. But I just didn't have the time. So I wanted to do everything within 1 hour, pretty much. But you could have done that, definitely. Autolyse already now. Autolyse in the morning, I mean, now it's 5 p.m. and then start putting everything together a little bit later. That would definitely have worked. And this is the best part, probably. This is always what gives the unique taste into your sourdough. A little bit of human, pretty much, into the buns, into the dough. But maybe it's just me that I'm German. But I could never let some pieces of the dough go to waste. It would hurt me too much. By the way, some people told me that I have a childish love. I don't know what to think about that, but actually sometimes I feel like I'm a 6-year-old child. So I apologize for my childish love sometimes. I'm just quickly going to be cleaning my hands now. Actually, normally I would cover this, but since it's just an hour, there's really no need to cover this. If you're in a warm environment, then maybe yes, this is something you could do. Just another quick note on kneading. So I see people kneading 10 minutes right away. Be smart about it. Don't knead 10 minutes. What you want to do is knead for a little bit, let that mixture sit, and then go back to it and knead it again. It will do so much of a difference. Because by just mixing water, the gluten network already develops, similar almost to an autolyse process, except this is not all the ingredients. So be smart about kneading. I think this must have been 2 minutes. I did not take the exact timings. Yeah, now I'm just gonna let that sit for 2 minutes, 5 minutes. 2 minutes is already perfect. Then we can go right back to it and continue kneading. And this is just gonna make so much of a big difference. And now it's time for me to enjoy a little bit of tea. Okay, let me check what you were asking. Cassie Royal, haha, how old are you? Oh, I just turned 30. Oh no, I'm 30 years old. Can you believe that? I'm so old. And I'm turning 31 soon. Yeah, I noticed that recently after when I was on a wedding, and now at 30, after a few beers or so, I directly get a hangover the next day. So old. Elegant says baker's hands are actually influencing the taste of the dough. That's interesting. So there's only one kind of unique bread that you can get from some bakers because you need your hands to have touched the dough. And also, what about cleaning the hands? Do the hands have to be cleaned before to give it this unique taste? Toasted Synapse Gaming, by the way, cheers. I appreciate all your amazing comments that you have on the videos. You're always challenging me a lot. Truly appreciate it. Keep them going. Okay, so then John Passo asks, please list the ingredients and amounts again. I'm just listing them here one more time so that you can follow the same recipe. Marta Chismeric, very young. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Fernando Garduno, me too, man. Yes, we are getting older. Cassie Royal asks, can you proof non-sourdough artisan bread in the fridge overnight? Yes, you definitely can. You could take a yeasted bread and also proof it in the fridge. Chances are, though, it ferments a little bit faster, so timings could be a little bit faster for you. Something you just have to experiment. The good thing about baking with yeast is if it collapses too much, you can just reiterate, reshape it. Nothing lost. With sourdough, you can always run into that dangerous over-fermentation stage, pretty much. Oh, it's upside down. Sorry. Ruff Rose, hi, du bist groß. Sorry for my German. Ruff says, Hendrik, you are big. Yes. No, I'm actually a small person. I'm like 178 centimeters, I guess. Cfazio, it's upside down. Hey, Cfazio, how's it going? Nice to see you again here. Thank you. I just turned it around. John Passo, yes, sorry for now it's turned around. You see? What age did you say you are, El Saba? I am 30 years old. 30. I always have issues saying 30. We Germans would say 30. I'm the 30 years old. And whoa. Everybody, look at this gluten development already. Isn't that amazing? Just by letting this sit for a few minutes. It's looking so good. And we're now going to give this the final gluten development. Just removing all from the pot to the side. And now we start bench kneading. I love using the bench. I did not flour the bench. We are using the tension of the surface to just put together this dough. And this way we can just glue the dough together so much. I just love using the bench. It's just such a great thing to do. Resist the urge to use any additional flour. And we are just doing this smart. You could of course be also using a kitchen machine if you wanted to. But you see, by just doing a few things like waiting, doing some bench kneading, you get the same result pretty much. And just look at this good looking piece of dough already. This one looks perfect. And one thing which I challenge you to learn is how to round up the dough without a dough scraper. Let me just show you one more time. So this is our dough. Not looking very nice, and now we want to round this up. Of course, we could be using a dough scraper for this, but what we are going to do is we're just going to use our hands. So at a 45-degree angle, push inside. Actually, what I will do is I will just mark the center here so that you can see what I'm actually doing. So this here always stays in the center. I'm pushing inside and then I'm pulling, but I'm trying to make sure this here stays in the center so this doesn't roll. This is really such a good thing to practice. You need this for buns, for pizza, for sourdough bread. Yeah, just practice this, learn this. Great thing to know. And our dough is just coming together so much. I'm already quite happy now. I'm seeing here, maybe that's my German OCD. The dough tore a little bit. I did it too much. And if I keep doing this, it's now just gonna keep tearing and tearing. So the proper thing to do now is just to wait for a minute or 2 minutes and then keep going at it again. And me being a cheap German, I of course don't want to waste any dough. While we are waiting, I'm just gonna quickly try to find my dough scraper. I lost it somewhere. I was the kind of person that would always forget his sports clothes at school pretty much. In German we say Turnbeutelvergesser. Sports clothes forgetting person. Dough scraper. I found the dough scraper. Okay, checking back on the chat. So, Walter Mellon, you have been kneading wrong. Yes, you have to knead smart. So again, for kneading, knead a little bit, wait, knead again. Such an amazing thing to do. And now this tour here, bad dough, you're a bad dough, just wait. And then we will go at it again. Time is important. Toasted Synapse Gaming says, okay, you always round the dough by hand. Yes, definitely, I agree, it's very easy. The only thing I don't like about rounding by hand is that sometimes you have some bits of flour left on the surface, and using the dough scraper, you pretty much just remove the full dough from the surface, and then you don't waste any flour. That's what I like, or maybe it's just the German in me that likes this. Okay, everybody, looking good. You've seen me using this sample hack before, and this is pretty much our fermentation sample. Same thing for yeast, although with yeast you could probably also let your dough inflate even further. But this one is pretty much ready when it doubled in size, and this now already started fermenting after we, good dough, please do your job, after we added the starter and the yeast. And I'm just gonna extract a little bit and just place this in this jar. Now this is not a fancy jar, I just got this for free after I bought a dessert, chocolate dessert or so. You can use anything, it should be of cylindric shape, of course. So I'm just, the extracting a tiny piece of the dough, and I will put this inside. Same thing when you're baking sourdough bread. And actually there is going to be a video upcoming this Friday where I have a closer look at this sample, looking at how much it should increase in size, because this also depends a little bit on the flour that you're using. And Toasted Synapse Gaming, appreciate all your insights again. I'm learning so much from all of your comments. I'm actually sorry that I have not been able to answer all the comments recently. I will do that ASAP. And you always challenge me. I learned something new. I also appreciate all of you answering the other sourdough bakers. It's just so nice to read how you help each other and how everybody is able to make a nice bread. That just keeps me motivated. Okay, so rubber band here, and the rubber band I will just, maybe I should have used the bigger rubber band. Nose, you rubber band. Yeah, okay. Like this, I think you can see it probably. So I'm just using this here, this rubber band. Okay, I will just place it like this so that I can observe it. I placed the rubber band. I'm now just closing this because I don't want this to dry out. And when I see this doubled in size, then the dough is ready. And this should happen relatively quickly, I guess, because we used so much yeast. And now it's time to round this dough up one more time. I will show you now how to do that using a dough scraper. We used the hands before, and now I'll show you with a dough scraper, 45-degree angle, and then push. See how my finger stays in the middle all the time? This is really a good thing that you should learn and practice. Very useful and also very impressive when you have friends over and you can show them that you mastered this skill. And this is a good looking bun dough. I will just take this now and place this in my pot again. Some of you have also pointed out that stainless steel is not so good, especially when it comes into contact with acid. Yes, but then at the same time we also make tomato sauce inside of it. Or I would appreciate maybe one of you, if you're a chemist or so, maybe analyzing this in detail and sharing some more thoughts, or maybe you have some research, send it to me. I would be very curious to know. Yeah, I said before I won't cover it, but now I actually feel like covering it a little bit. I will just let this sit here while we are waiting. Now we just pretty much have to wait until this dough doubled in size. I'm now going to turn around the camera, and then if you want, you can ask me some more of the questions. So, okay, I'm now having a look again at the chat. So, Jano M, I loved your video with Enzo Coccia. It was awesome. Thank you so much. That truly means a lot. If you've not seen this, everybody, I made a video where I traveled to Naples and I was in the pizzeria in Naples for a day. Basically a dream come true for me, and I learned so much about making pizza. If you have not seen it, I recommend you to check it out. If you're a pizza geek like me, then you will enjoy this video. And also so much, thank you so much to the team again for hosting me there. It was really nice. So Noah says there are different kinds of protein content for different kinds of bread flour. Yes, that's true. The flour is probably, together with your sourdough, the single most important ingredient of your bread. In general, the more sun you have, the more protein you have inside of the wheat grain. This is a little bit similar to wine. The more sun you have, the more sugar the grapes can develop. This is because then the plant is focusing on the fewer seeds, and the plant tries to make those seeds better. And of course you also have less of a harvest, but then the grains that are left have a higher protein content. So in general, more protein for wheat specifically is a sign of more sun exposure. That's a problem in Germany, for instance, because yeah, Hamburg is probably the most awesome city on the world, but probably the city also with the worst, with the worst weather. So yeah, the more sun, the better the wheat typically. Now, if you have a flour which has a poor protein content, you can definitely always mix in some vital wheat gluten, which is pretty much just wheat extract, which you mix back into the flour. Depending on the manufacturer of your flour, this is actually what some of the manufacturers, some of the mills do. If they don't have high quality wheat, they just mix in some vital wheat gluten. So you could definitely also be doing that yourself to treat your own flour. Marky Jovanovic, I never heard to not use stainless steel. So some people are saying that the acid inside of the stainless steel pot is pretty much, the acid of the dough is reacting with the stainless steel. That's what I heard. That's what some people commented, at least on my videos. I've been doing this for many years. Maybe I have a price to pay in 40, 50 years, hopefully, fingers crossed. But I would surely appreciate some more research on this. As far as I can see, I don't see a major problem with this. But if you want to be safe, then you can of course definitely be using a glass bowl or something like this. So Brunle says, in Norway it seems hard to get flour with more than 12% protein, but I found some organic spelt flour with 13%, and it's weird how much difference it made in the dough. So modern spelt, I've actually never baked that much with spelt because I like to just perfect one recipe before moving on. But modern spelt from a genetic perspective is very, very similar to wheat. So in some recipes you can just replace 1-to-1 pretty much wheat with spelt if that's an option for you. That's definitely going to work. But other than that, you always have to test with your flour. The water amount you should be using is different, and so on. The properties are different. The size increase, how much you can inflate it, how much balloon material you pretty much have inside. So it's always about experimenting, and that's actually what I love about sourdough baking. It's just so unique. And if you find a recipe online, you can't directly follow it sometimes because you have to adapt to your own environment. And that was also the reason why I started this YouTube channel some time ago, because the why is so important. You have to understand, you have to adapt for your own environment. And yeah, that's also why my videos are sometimes so long. I apologize for that, but I just feel I want to put in all the information that's required to enable you to bake this delicious sourdough bread at home. Jano M, in Brazil we have a lot of sun, but our flours are really weak. Okay, but for that in exchange you got amazing caipirinha and you have amazing churrasco, right? So you can have everything, I guess. I was in Brazil once and I really enjoyed it. It was such a nice time I had over there. Delicious food, amazing people, very nice. Oh, and in Brazil, fun story. So in Germany, sometimes you can buy some drinks which are pre-mixed. And in Brazil, I thought it's the same. And I went to an airplane and I just wanted to drink another caipirinha because I just liked the drink. Must have been 2 years ago. And then I went into a store and there they had something, it already looked like a pre-mixed caipirinha. And then I just thought, okay, I'm gonna buy this. This is also not so expensive, so it's probably was around $1 US, I guess. So this is probably pre-mixed caipirinha. And then I bought it, went on the plane, and I tried to drink it, and it was just pure cachaça, which is the alcohol that you use to make the caipirinha. And yeah, it was very, 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 very strong. And I've never seen this in no country before, that you can just buy. It was a 300 milliliter aluminum can, yes, aluminum can, just out of cachaça. But then my German nature kicked in, of course, and yeah, we don't like to let things go to waste, and I had to finish this, of course, but it was not such a good idea, I guess. Cassie Royal, was ist deine Lieblingsflour? What is your favorite flour? It depends on what you are baking. I'm sorry for being so generic. But a really good flour manufacturer, which I also visited in Germany, would be Draxmühle. They're very good. They're making excellent flours, and there's also going to be a video coming out of me visiting them at some point soon. And also in Italy, northern Italy, Mulino Padano, they also make excellent flours. But you can never go wrong with Caputo flour, for instance. They're available worldwide pretty much. Just look at the protein amount. King Arthur, if you're in the US, King Arthur also makes amazing flour. Yes, so that would be some of the options I would be choosing probably. So Rolfmeyer says, deal is perfect. The only problem, it can be allergies. Interesting, I did not know this. GI, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. I'm terribly sorry. Can you talk about the qualities of the flour you use? Yes, so I like to, it depends of course on what I'm baking, but for buns or for bread where I want to have a lot of oven spring, you need to have a lot of balloon material inside, and that's pretty much the gluten. So that's why I opt for a flour which has a high protein content, and a high protein content, 80% of that typically for wheat is gluten. So you can inflate more and you can also ferment longer. That's the advantages. So for this open crumb style bread which has nice oven spring, definitely a high gluten, high protein flour. Now if I want to make a German style bread, or if I want to use a loaf pan, then I might be opting for close to 1-to-1 flour and water. So very, 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 very sticky dough. And then it doesn't really matter that much. So I don't have to develop any gluten. I don't need that much. The dough is very, very wet, and I just pour that into a loaf pan pretty much. So for that style of bread, you don't need the high protein amount. Yeah, so it depends a little bit on the use case, what you're trying to achieve pretty much. Hope this answered your question. Walter Melin, how long ago was this that you were able to bring 300 milliliters of liquid onto an airplane? No, so I bought it after the security already. So it was not before the security, it was after the security. Fun story, I was once taking my sourdough with me on a plane. I had to go to Düsseldorf. I met up with some friends and I promised them we would make some bread, and I would take the dough. I made the dough in the morning and I would take the dough with me on the airplane. But then for the security said, well, the security in advance, I already knew. When I was in France, I brought a nice camembert back home, and I said, no, it's liquid cheese, you can't bring it. And I had to eat that whole camembert right there in front of everybody. I had to do it, of course, because I'm German, so I couldn't let this go to waste. And so for the dough, I thought I wanted to be clever. So what I did is I made the dough and then I put it into the freezer until the whole dough probably had at 1 degree Celsius temperature or so. And that was very, very stiff. And I tried to bring that with me through security. And they said, you can't just make a liquid colder. This is not gonna work. But they pretty much just for that one day, after they opened up the container, they could smell the sourness, and they just allowed me to take the dough with me. And I was able to make my friends happy in the evening then by making some buns. Actually, the same buns we are making now. And just looking at the buns, have a look at this already. See how much this already increased in size. This is crazy. This is just all the amount of yeast that we are using. So this is happening fast. And actually I'm now going to be preheating my oven already. And for making the buns, 1 second. I will just be placing them on a tray like this. Now, if you were to omit the yeast and only make sourdough buns, completely sourdough buns, sorry, I need a bigger kitchen. Then you would need to use something like this, where you would put the tiny buns inside and then pretty much almost like when making baguettes, you would make something like this, and there you would proof them inside to just give them a little bit of support. That's always the challenge when making sourdough buns because they have to proof for longer compared to yeast buns, and then you need to give them some support. If you were to just proof them on the tray, they are likely very, very flat. That's what I find always a little bit challenging about making sourdough buns. That's why the yeast tag is quite good, because this dough is ready soon, and then we can just directly place them on the tray and bake them. No stress, pretty much. Makes it a little bit easier. So yeah, for baguettes or sourdough buns, if you want to proof them for longer, then this is a great thing to have. Okay, so all right, so let's go back to this mysterious dough. Just turning the camera one more time. I hope you are able to see everything. No. So I think this is looking pretty good. Just gonna clean this up here real quick. Oh no, I lost some yeast. Okay, so I would say this is the dough already. Yeah, just look at how much this inflated. Insane. Because my oven takes 30 minutes to preheat, I will already be preheating my oven now. I will put it to the max temperature. And so the way how I'm going to bake is, I will have a tray where I will put the sourdough buns, and then below I have another bowl of this, which I will fill with some water. And then on top I will put another tray. I have this on my YouTube account as well. It's pretty much the cheap German style to emulate a Dutch oven. So we have steam, it goes upwards, it gets trapped, and that way our buns will turn out really, really, really nice. So this also now has to go into the oven because this has to preheat for a little bit. Okie dokes. Then let's take out the dough here. I will just be placing this here on my kitchen counter and put the pot away, no longer need it. Okay. And now I like to make buns roughly of 100 grams each. Let's see how much that actually is. Using the dough scraper, you could also be using a sharp knife. I'm extracting some parts, 90 grams. So 100 grams. I'm just making the small portions first, and then I will put them into a nice shape. This is also why I recommend you to try making buns, because you just can test a little bit more. So this is really pretty much just miniature sourdough bread. And that's why making buns, you can score more, you can shape more. It's just really a great exercise. And don't worry too much if they don't look so nice yet. We are going to fix that in a little bit. Of course, by just removing some parts of the dough, I'm also evening out the crumb a little bit. So they're not gonna be as open crumb as a bread that you would not divide and pre-shape, for instance. So this of course also has an impact on the crumb in the end. Now I'm just taking the other tiny piece of dough. That was a little bit too much. 104, perfect. 50. And it's always so satisfying when you nail it. But today, my mojo is gone a little bit. Nice. And now I'm also just going to take the sample and just look at how much it increased in size. And I will also be putting the sample here. Wow, almost 100 grams. Good job. Okay. So now what we do is we just pre-shape our buns, and that's pretty much the same thing, same technique that you used earlier to round up the dough, okay? This is called pre-shaping. At a 45-degree angle, push and pull. Then we will place them here. We will just make all of them nice and round first, then allow the gluten to relax a little bit, and then we will shape them one last time, just exactly the same way as you would do when you're shaping a sourdough bread. And you see, this way I can just practice it so many times. That's 8 times if I can count correctly. 8 times at the same time, pretty much. So try making some buns. Brötchen. Try saying Brötchen. Now 100 people are saying Brötchen, I guess. German word for buns. Brötchen. German is so hard. I'm sorry. Such a difficult language to learn. One hand pre-shaped like a boss. Yes. Thank you. I've done this a few times. You can also use a dough scraper if you want. But I would recommend you to just try this with your hands. Sorry for that. Nice. Watermelon, do you use the indicator dough in the jar at the end? Usually. I use this indicator jar for almost everything that I do now related to bread fermentation. It just makes things so much easier. And normally what I do is I just take this, put on a little bit of oil, and then I just fry this in the pan. Delicious English muffin. I place it in the fridge, and then I use it at some point whenever I have time. So I never let this go to waste, or I put this in my discard starter jar, for instance. Okay, all right. Be right back. I'm just gonna clean my hands real quick. Oops, I'm sorry. Okay, so while the buns here are just bench resting a little bit, this is great as the gluten can relax, I'm just going to be preparing a few toppings. I like to use some sesame, German label maker game, some sesame seeds. You can do this as you like, of course, and some, I think, poppy seeds, Mohn in German, the black ones here. Okay, perfect. So we have 8 buns. So the recipe here, the recipe that I showed before, I'll just show it to you one more time. I'll also add it later on to the description of the stream. This is gonna give us 8 buns. Okay, nice. And one more thing that I have to do is I need to just get me some water. And in this bed of water, I will just quickly put in the buns and then place them in the seeds afterwards. Oh, this is getting a little bit too crowded now. Okay. Just quick cleanup action here. Okay, awesome. So now for the buns, they inflated really nice, and now it's time. My husband said you should do live shows and call it Gluten Morgan. Cassie Royal. Thank you. Gluten Morgan, yeah. Watermelon, German bread puns. Thank you so much. I did not know Germans could be funny. How many Germans do you need to change a light bulb? 1, because we're efficient, but we're not funny at all. Okay. So I actually have a small jar here. It was inspired by my neighbor who does woodworks. He calls this Opferholz. Hello Erik. And I call this Opfermehl. This is pretty much all the flour that I have here on my surface, which I don't use. And I put this into this jar and I then use it for occasions like this, where I just need a little bit of random flour. So I actually have no idea what kind of flour this is. I just need a little bit of this Opfermehl. Which means victimized flour, violated flour, I guess, I don't know. So then just take the bun here. This side now has to go to the bottom. And now you have to be very gentle. And I will be showing you 2 techniques, okay? I will show you a simple and an advanced technique. Stretch the bun a little bit so that you have a bigger surface area here. Note how I'm not trying to touch the sticky side of the bun. I'm just trying to put my hands here at the bottom where I have a little bit of flour, where it's not so sticky. Okay, and then just take this side here, put it into the middle. Rotate the bun, put this into the middle again, and just keep doing this, and this is going to create a lot of tension at the bottom. Very easy. Just keep doing this for a few times, I would say 2 turns roughly, and then your bun should be looking like this. Now we need to round this up one more time using the same technique we used before, pretty much, by dragging it over the kitchen counter. Perfect looking bun, I would say. Now take this bun and bounce it quickly into the water here. Whoops, like this. And then afterwards into seeds, whatever you want. You don't actually have to do this, but I just like this taste it adds. And then I'm placing it on my parchment papered tray. One more time. Now I'm just doing the same thing again without any flour at all. That should also work because the dough is not that high in hydration. I just have to use, oh sorry, I actually didn't stretch it. I'm an idiot. So stretch this a little bit more. That way we have a bigger surface area and we can glue the dough together more. And now using not any flour, I have a lot more tension, so I can just make the bun a little bit nicer and rounder. That's it pretty much. One more time, dive it into your water and then into the poppy seeds. Nice. Okay, just one more time the same technique without flour. Stretch it. And I'll be showing you a different technique in a little bit. So this is when you want to make round buns, but you can use any shape you like pretty much. Like this. One more time. Sesame seeds. Oops. Perfect. And now just for the fun, I will be making one without any seeds at all. Okay. So round this up one more time. This is something you just have to practice. But again, try making buns. You get so much more practice. Really good. Perfect. Now we already have 4 nice looking buns pretty much. Time to now use a different technique. Ah, Jose! Lausuch. How's it going? Nice to see you again, Jose. Hope all is good in Spain. Geppy, 365 Opfermehl, gute Idee. Thank you so much. Right now, my room temperature Toasted Synapse Gaming is asking, it's roughly 25 degrees Celsius right now. Okay, so the next technique. This one I like a lot because it's very similar to the one that I then use when I make a sourdough batard. Again, do the same thing, round and stretch this a little bit so that we have a bigger surface area. Put this into the middle, and now take the other side and fold this over. Rotate, and now the same thing I would use for batard shaping. Fold this over, push this down, keep pushing this, and that's this way you make a nice looking roll. Look at this. Almost the same. Now what I could be doing is, of course, I could be closing the lid here on the side, or I just don't do that because I like the rustic look of this. But yes, and also since I did not use any flour, I can just put this directly onto the seeds. One more time, the same technique, okay? And I will just be using a little bit of flour now to make things easier. So a little flour, just really a tiny bit. So one more time, the shaping technique into the middle, push this down. This sticky side has to go here. Once, twice. Put this in front of me like this. Pull this out and then roll this in, tuck this down. With your two thumbs, push inside, roll, push inside, roll, push inside, roll, and so on. And this is how the dough looks now. Very gentle, very good for the dough. And two more without flour. We can actually make a baguette if you're interested. I'm just gonna make a baguette. Same technique pretty much, except that we just keep folding over the dough. This is how it looks, and now we can just and here we go with our baguette. Oops. So baguette has been made, and I have room for one more poppy seeds. I want poppy seeds. So to everybody who just joined, I'm going to be also adding the recipe one more time into the description of the stream so that you can watch this later. And into the poppy seeds here, water. Delicious. That's a good amount of poppy seeds. Okay, I'm just quickly going to clean this up here. Here we go with the buns. Okay, just need to change this a little bit. Those are the buns, and you will see how much they are going to increase in size. And they are ready. This is called the finger poke test. When we poke inside, and we can see that this is just very, very, very slowly expanding. That's when they are ready to be baked. I think that's going to be 15. I always have issues with pronouncing 15 minutes, pretty much. So we now just have to wait a little bit. I'm going to turn the camera around one more time. And oh no, I'll just leave it like this. You can watch my buns as they grow. And look at the chat. So if you have questions, please feel free to send some questions my way. So, Toasted Synapse Gaming, can you not do the batard shaping but round it up into a ball with a 45-degree movement? Yeah, that would actually also, that would work. Yes, that would definitely work. That's something you could do. The only thing I would be worried about when doing that is that you might be tearing the surface a little bit too much. And then the surface of the dough is not so nice, round and smooth anymore like here, but you might be tearing it a little bit too much. That's why I would probably not do it, but if you're very gentle, you could try that. Yes, definitely. Hope this explains it. Mobilfone, unterschiedliche Garzeit. Could you elaborate a little bit more? Different proofing times. Could you elaborate a little more what you mean? Thank you. Sifazio, I would dip them in milk instead of water for extra browning. That's actually a very cool, very interesting idea. Probably egg wash would also work. Jose says, when he was living in Germany, he used Brötchen every morning. Better than Schnitzel. Yes, we Germans are obsessed with buns. I don't know why. But also when I post my buns recipes, typically people don't appreciate them as much as my batard recipes or so. So yeah, we Germans love buns. For Germany, it's all about making Brötchen. Actually, I have a little bit of a dangerous situation here. I will just gently take this and place this somewhere else. Now, if you were to proof them for a longer period of time, I would definitely advise you to use this linen here so that they don't dry out. But one thing which I learned in Bavaria when they make pretzel buns, they actually let the surface of the dough dry out quite a lot. And that's going to make scoring in the end so much easier. Scoring is when we cut this and then the dough is going to expand while baking through this weak spot. So yeah, drying out also helps with scoring in the end. So Jose, yeah, glad you enjoyed the Brötchen in Germany. Watermelon, yes, we will also be scoring this mini baguette. This is a poor man's version of the baguette, pretty much. If you don't have a lot of money, then you can only afford this miniature baguette. Sun Wong, is there any tips to maintain the sourdough starter for a longer time, like up to a year? I tried to keep my starter, but it was failed that it was no longer active for the second use. Yes, this starter here has been with me all around the world. If you're ever in Hamburg, send me a message, please. I'm happy to give you some of my starter called Bread Pit. I like to take it with me. The best trip was probably to India or to the Amish people in the US when I visited the Amish. Very interesting experience. And I also fed it with some Amish flour. Use whole wheat flour, whole rye flour in general. It has more nutrients. And then place it in your fridge. I have a nice video on reactivating your starter when it comes out of the fridge. In the fridge, it's typically good for months. Some people also just dry out the starter, something you could do. Just put a little bit of starter on your tray, mix it with a lot of flour, and then just, it's very, very dry, and then you can also store it for a long time. Hope this makes sense. So, Anish, 1 hour reached. Oh no, shoot, yes, my bad. So we have been here for almost 1 hour. So I expected this to be a little bit faster. I could have probably used a little more yeast, I guess. Well, I also had like 10 minutes of technical difficulties at the start where I was just looking like a complete idiot. But glad that this sorted out now. So I could have used warmer water because now also when I touch the buns, have a look, they're just 23 degrees Celsius. Maybe the water that I used wasn't warm enough. I probably should have used warmer water close to 40 or 50 degrees Celsius or so. So it's interesting. The temperature here of the stone is warmer than the temperature of the buns. So I think that's the most likely explanation why they took so long and why they are still taking a little bit longer. Nothing bad, but if you want to have them ready faster, just use warmer water. For sourdough, pure sourdough, I would not recommend you to do that because then also the bacteria is more active in your sourdough and they might become too sticky. Cassie Royal, do you ever knead using the heels of your hands method? I've never heard this method. Heels of my hands. What would be the heels of my hands method? I pretty much always just do a stretch and fold for kneading. So I take the dough, lift it over, and then push it down with my hand. And I'm always a big advocate of not using any kitchen machine, because you have to develop that feeling for the dough. That's very important. And with a kitchen machine, you can't. Toasted Synapse Gaming, are you going to spray them with water, oil, milk before placing them in the oven? That's actually a good idea. Let's spray them with some water. Yes, just to give them a little bit of extra humidity so that we can get better oven spring. To everybody who just joined, they're currently just waiting here, waiting to pass the finger poke test, which is passed when the dough, I put a dent in here, recovers very quickly. Then the dough has been nicely inflated and it's ready to be baked. How long does this take? I have no idea. Until it's ready, I will just be answering some more questions. So if you have questions, please send them my way. Olga Beckinger, what do you think about adding diastic malt powder to the flour? Does it speed up fermentation? Yes, actually, Olga, that's exactly what we did today. I was adding some barley malt extract to this here. It makes the fermentation process quicker. So yes, that's exactly what we have done. Roseanne Lowy, if you don't have to make them in just 1 hour, let's say closer to 2 hours or so, how much baker's yeast can I subtract from the recipe? Okay, so one more time to everybody, the recipe, and I was using 4% of dry yeast. If you have more time, if the time is not of an essence, then remove the sugar. The malt would be nice, but you can also remove it. So remove the sugar, remove the malt. You can also leave the malt, it's nice, it helps with the speed and also adds flavor. And here for yeast, you could be using 1% of dry yeast, so that would be 4 grams. Or if you even have more time, you can use 1 gram of dry yeast. Then things will be a little bit slower, but you just have this hack here, where you see, did it double in size? And when it did, it's ready to be placed, it's ready to be shaped. And then you also just do the finger poke test. So if you want to slow down the fermentation, which helps with developing also more taste, then just use a little bit less yeast. No worries at all. Walter Malin, yes, Brad Pitt. Yes, that's my name. That's my starter here, Brad Pitt. He's been making many children just like in real life, pretty much. You named your starters after cities since they are yeast and bacteria colonies. Okay, that's also pretty good. Your friend's starter's named Rasputin. That's also good. Lisa Dufour, Brad Lane. Yes, this one is called Schnittholz. Schnitt-holz.com. Okay, you know what? Please drop a comment on one of my videos or so that I see it, and I will send you the link gladly. They are quite nice. I just love the shape and how they look. Good object. All right, so the buns are increasing. Hello. So how's everybody? How's the situation? Let me actually show you a project that I'm working on. So this Friday, my no knead tutorial will go live. And actually already a quick peek for next week. This is the same recipe then, which I will show you on Friday, which I also showed partially already next week in my starter tips. And this is my sourdough recipe then for my no knead bread recipe, including some seeds, olives, whatever you want. And this one is almost ready. Have a look at how much the sample already here increased in size. It will be featured in next week's video, pretty much. I'm very excited how this is going to turn out. It could also turn into a gigantic fail. Let's see, at least I learned something new then, I guess. So, quick preview. Malini soya I'm sorry for not being able to pronounce your name. Have you baked with heritage grains? Yes, I have. I have baked with einkorn. I have baked with emmer. Amazing grains. For that, you don't have to do any strength development. I would recommend you to use a loaf pan though. That makes things so much easier. Or you just use any of my recipes and you add 20% of that grain. It's going to improve the taste for sure. And it will not alter the main properties of your flour, of your dough that much. Noah Tababa, how much does your infrared thermometer cost? Ooh, this one, I think it was $20 US or something, so not that expensive. There's many options on Amazon available. This was not the best option. This one, I just, it makes things so much easier. That's why I like to use it. Sunflower, could you put the rolls in a proofing box to help them stay warm? Yes, definitely. You could definitely do that. You could also just be placing them inside of your oven with just lights on, or inside of your closet or something like this. Would definitely help just to keep them warm. And just doing the finger poke test one more time, you can see here, after I poke the dough, the dent recovers here, but the dent is recovering relatively slowly here. So I would say, based on what I can see, this is pretty much ready to be baked almost. So next up, I will now be preheating my water because I have to put water into the oven. And then those buns will go directly in the oven. So for baking, I already showed you that I have a bowl which I heat, and there I will put in some boiling water. And then on top, I put another tray like this, pretty much like this. And this way, all the steam is going to be trapped here below this tray. Oh, this water cooker, it's a little bit loud. So I actually do have another idea what I can do. Let me just turn this off again. I guess it's relatively noisy. Okay, small change of plans because I just don't want to make this too noisy. I will just be using hot water from the tap, the hottest water possible. And I'll also do what Synapse Gaming suggested. I will be spraying them with some additional water just to make sure I have enough humidity in there. This is pretty much a great hack. So if you don't have a Dutch oven, this way you can also bake 2 breads at the same time. My cheap German hack. Place it on top, steam is trapped below. Excellent. This will make you amazing bread all the time. And I don't preheat this one. I will just place this in the oven together with the buns. Okay, so I will be scoring them now. And then in the end, I will just bake them. The baking is not part of the stream. I will share a link to the results later on my YouTube profile and also in the description of the stream. I'll be baking them at 230 degrees. So finger poke test passed. And now the next steps is we have to bake them for 15 minutes at 230 degrees Celsius, remove steam, bake another 5 to 10 minutes at 230 degrees Celsius. That's what we're doing now. Now those buns are at room temperature, and that makes it a little bit more challenging to score them because the knife is just going to tear very likely. Let me show you what that looks like, okay? So I will take this bun and I'm trying to cut this at a 45-degree angle. Actually, it does not tear. Interesting. I expected it to tear a little bit more, but maybe that's because the buns dried out so much. Let me try one more time here. Ooh, this works very, very nicely. So why I was saying this, I actually wanted to show you something. And what I wanted to show you is I put a little bit of oil here on my razor blade. This is just a razor blade. You don't need this fancy attachment. You could also just be using the razor blade directly. And oiling this a little bit, and maybe it works now because I oiled it yesterday and there's still some leftover oil, makes it so easy to score. Oh, look at this nice gluten here. You can be fancy. I like to score buns a little bit like this. Just gives a beautiful pattern. You can also score them at a 45-degree angle to get a little bit of an ear. Beautiful. And this one I will use the same pattern, the cross pattern. Sorry, I'm now very concentrated. I'm one of those persons that can't focus on two things at the same time. You can be creative, and maybe also because the dough dried out a little bit now. That's actually something the people in Bavaria suggested to me. That's what I like to do with their pretzels. Oh, this is looking really, really good. I'm very excited to how they will look after baking. And for the baguette, the mini baguette. Oh, I screwed that up. No. Like this. And then they're ready to be put into the oven. And I'll follow the tip Toasted Synapse Gaming gave me. I will spray them with a little bit of extra water. This just gives a nice additional humidity, and now they will be going right into the oven. And then this one here will go on top to trap all that steam coming from here. Oven temperature 230 degrees Celsius. And now, since I don't use any hot water, I'm just going to spritz the oven a little bit. All right, temperature lowered, and now the buns are baking. Let me turn this around one more time. And yes, so the buns are baking now. It took a little bit longer. I would say probably 1.5 hours actually, but we figured out that maybe my water was not warm enough. So next time, to make that faster, use a little bit warmer water definitely. I don't know why that happened, maybe because I took the water in advance and waited for a little bit too long. Yeah, so 1.5 hours I guess is the total time that this is going to take. They're baking now, and I'm very, very excited to see how they're looking. I was actually surprised to see how well I could just operate with the razor blade like this. And they proved at room temperature, and yes, now I can feel it because it's still a little bit oiled. That just makes it so much easier to cut into the dough. Definitely a great thing to do. I'm excited how they're going to be in the end. I will be sharing the final results on my YouTube account. That's inside of this community tab or something, but I'll also be adding them to this stream. I will add a picture there in the description of the stream. If you have questions, if I didn't explain something, please shoot me a message, a comment on the stream, and I'll make sure to answer it. Don't miss this week's update on Friday, where I show my full no-knead bread recipe. One more time, I premiered it already so that you can already get a notification if you're interested. I'll be there as well. We can have a nice chat again. And just wanted to say thank you so much for all the nice comments, all the great feedback, all the ideas that you're sharing with me. I'm becoming a better baker myself, and I hope that with my tips, I'm sorry for the length sometimes, you are also becoming a better baker, because there's nothing more delicious than a nice homemade baked sourdough. And today I'm a little bit proud because I was able to show you some German culture Sauerteig Brötchen. Well, not necessarily 100% Sauerteig, not 100% sourdough, but yeah, we Germans love buns. And some people ask me about it, so I figured I share in a live stream. So that brings us to the end of this video. I hope I did not miss too many questions. Again, if I did, please drop a comment somewhere, then I'll reply to it a little bit later. Thank you so much. Time to clean up this mess a little bit. And yeah, happy baking, and may the gluten be with you. Tschüss, bye bye.